Hey everyone, welcome back to The Explainer. Today we are tackling a deeply human dilemma. We're exploring why conflicts so often escalate way beyond the basic facts, and more importantly, how we can practically navigate them without tearing our hair out or ruining our relationships. To do this, we're going to use some incredible insights from the Deru Kailo conflict navigation method, which is this incredibly precise framework that completely dissects how human arguments actually work.
So let's dive right into this universal headache. I mean, we all know the pain of a tiny, seemingly totally insignificant misunderstanding suddenly spiraling completely out of control, right? You're arguing over something ridiculously petty, like who left the front door unlocked or why a text message wasn't answered within 5 minutes. And suddenly, bam, you're locked in this existential battle over whether you even care about each other at all. Well, the source framework we're reviewing today explains exactly why this happens, and it all has to do with what those small events come to represent.
And what's super fascinating here is how our own internal identity acts like this massive amplifier in these moments. The text points out a brilliant distinction. Think about a simple factual statement like, "You made a mistake." On the surface, that just means an error occurred. But when identity gets involved, that transforms completely. It suddenly becomes this devastating judgment. I am incompetent. The actual physical event didn't change at all, but the emotional intensity just exploded because of what the event signified.
To unpack all this, we're going to follow a really quick roadmap. We'll start with the hidden architecture, move through the 3 domains of truth, do a deep dive into the meaning domain, explore trust, symbol, and frame, establish why meaning is not verdict, and finally, shift to responsibility. Keep this flow in mind as we build our understanding.
All right, starting off with Section 1, the hidden architecture, moving beyond surface disagreements.
Think about something as simple as a locked door. It's not just a physical barrier, right? It is what it represents. It might represent safety and comfort to one person, but it might represent intentional exclusion to someone else. The foundational discipline of this entire framework is that human understanding improves drastically when we separate different kinds of truth before we jump to conclusions. We absolutely have to separate the physical event, the locked door, from the signified meaning, that feeling of being shut out.
Moving right along to Section 2, 3 domains of truth, mapping the territory of conflict.
The framework contrasts 3 specific domains: reality, perception, and meaning. Reality grounds us by asking what actually happened. Perception humanizes the interaction by asking how was it received or felt. And meaning connects it to broader significance by asking, what did it represent? The framework warns us that disaster strikes when we let one domain pretend to be all 3. You just can't use your feelings to replace facts, and you definitely can't use facts to erase someone's genuine experience.
If you take away one short-form tool today, let it be the simple 4-question compression. What happened? How was it experienced? What did it mean? And finally, what needs to happen now? These 4 essential questions beautifully guide a conversation from grounded reality, straight through the messy human experience, all the way to restoring active responsibility.
Now for Section 3, the meaning domain where interpretation becomes significance. This is going to be our main focus today. So here's the absolute crucial point. Meaning is where interpretation becomes significance. The framework states that we argue fiercely because an event has stopped being just a simple event. It's actually come to represent something deeply important about our identity, or about the safety of our relationships, or even our entire worldview. When a conflict reaches the meaning domain, trust me, we are no longer just arguing about the facts.
Let's break that down further in Section 4. Trust, symbol, and frame, the 3 layers of meaning.
Layer number 1 is the relational layer. This deals directly with what an action signifies between 2 people. Does this affect our trust, our care? The text gives this stunningly relatable example. Simply saying, "You know I care," often completely fails in the middle of an argument. Why? Because when trust is ruptured, a verbal reassurance just isn't enough. A true, observable repair signal for trust is what's actually needed to fix the relational meaning.
Next up, we have the symbolic layer. This asks what an event stands for way beyond the immediate interaction. It touches on dignity, belonging, and identity. I mean, we've all probably been on the receiving end of a bad joke defense, and this explains perfectly why "it was just a joke" is such a toxic thing to say when the other person experienced real humiliation or exclusion. The joke wasn't just words. It symbolically represented a threat to their dignity or their status within a group.
And the absolute deepest layer of meaning is the meta layer.
This is where people aren't even disagreeing about the isolated situation anymore. They're actually using entirely different maps of reality, fairness, and moral values to judge it. When a conflict hits the meta layer, it is a clash of worldviews. One person might value harmony above all else, while the other values blunt honesty. They're looking at the exact same event, but through entirely different frames.
To keep us from totally drowning in these deep waters, the sources give us this really practical step-by-step operational formula. Signal, symbol, frame, limit, and response. First, you identify the relational trust signal. Then you unpack the symbolic representation. You acknowledge the larger metaframe. You explicitly state the limit of what this actually proves. And finally, you decide on the proper response.
But as we transition into Section 5, meaning is not verdict, drawing the ethical boundary, we have to talk about a vital rule the source text strictly enforces.
This is literally a massive warning light. Meaning is data. Meaning is not an automatic verdict. Just because something feels symbolically hurtful or threatens our sense of trust, it does not automatically prove malicious intent on the other person's part. It definitely doesn't grant us total moral certainty. Meaning matters immensely, but the framework insists we must maintain proportion. Sincere perception, as real as it feels, is not always accurate perception.
You really have to walk a tightrope here between two extremes. On one side, we have to avoid meaning inflation, like concluding, "Oh, you forgot our anniversary date, therefore I mean absolutely nothing to you and you want to abandon me." But on the flip side, we must avoid meaning minimization, like brushing off a serious offense by saying, "It was just a joke," or "You're way too sensitive when real dignity was injured." Both of these extremes totally destroy healthy conflict resolution.
I just love how this captures the shift out of that analytical phase. Meaning completes interpretation. It does not complete responsibility. Understanding the deep relational, symbolic, or meta meaning of an argument is a huge breakthrough for sure, but it's really only the first half of the work. You can't just analyze a conflict forever. Eventually, you have to actually do something about it.
Which brings us to our final part, Section 6, shifting to responsibility, moving from interpretation to action.
Because depending on what meaning has actually formed, the right response might really surprise you. It's not always automatic reconciliation. Sometimes we just need to clarify our words. Sometimes we need to actively repair trust. But other times, we might need to set a firm boundary to protect ourselves, or simply accept that a genuine fundamental disagreement in values exists between us, and you know what? That's okay too.
The ultimate discipline in all this source material comes down to this ethical rule: use meaning to clarify, not to control. We have to name the meaning to untangle the conflict, to be able to say, hey, this is really about trust for me. But we must never weaponize that meaning to imprison another person inside our interpretation, treating our own subjective feeling as the absolute objective truth of who they are. So, I'm going to leave you with the framework's final and honestly most provocative question to ask yourself. The next time you find an argument escalating over something small, and after all the facts, the hurt feelings, and the deep symbolic meanings are laid bare on the table, ask yourself, what needs to happen now? Because insight is wonderful, but responsibility is what actually changes the future. The Deru Kailo method goes even deeper into how to execute those exact repairs. But until next time, I challenge you to look at your next argument and ask, what is this really representing?
Want to learn more? Explore the full framework in reality, perception, and meaning. Available now at derukailo.com and on Amazon Kindle.